Oh, what's up, world? Welcome back to the channel. APW Sports signing in. We're approaching the last week of the NFL preseason, and we're approaching a time where the teams are going to have to make their rosters from 90 to a 53-man roster. So today we're going to talk about what players should be cut at the deadline of making this a 53-man roster. But before I get into that, make sure you guys leave this video a like as it continues to help this channel to grow and it beats the algorithm. And if you are not subbed, go ahead and click the subscribe button and notification bell so you will not miss another video. But without further ado, let's dive into it. Okay, as we look at this, we're going to go to our first team. Arizona Cardinals quarterback Jeff Driscoll, and you have Colt McCoy is already on the roster, David Blau, and Kyler Murray is recovering from injury, so maybe not necessarily depending on where Kyler Murray is at with his recovery, but I could see this, even though according to this, he's been dealing with a calf injury on his own, so maybe they keep him as an emergency option or a practice squad guy. He's depending on the health of Murray, so I can see that. Atlanta Falcons, Clint Rakovich, fullback. They already have a lot in their backfield already. I would have thought this was probably going to be Cordarrelle Patterson, seeming as a lot of inquiries have been with him getting cut or moved around. I would have thought this would have been Cordarrelle Patterson as the guy that they would have said for the Falcons, but I mean, they have a loaded backfield already, and we are living in an NFL world where the fullback is starting to become basically obsolete. There's only very few teams that actually still utilize their fullback, like the Bears with Blasingame, the Niners with Juszczyk, so I'm not sure, but hey, I think this could be a possible move, but I thought it would have been Cordarrelle Patterson. The Baltimore Ravens, Del'Shawn Phillips. Now, they did acquire Roquan. They do have Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, Kristen Welch, Josh Ross for this roster. So there's going to be somebody that's going to be out. They drafted Trenton Simpson, so one of these guys are going to be out. So I just believe that he could possibly be a guy that could be moved. And I probably would have liked to see them probably snag another running back in free agency to make some noise at that offense, especially with the injury and the concerns with J.K. Dobbins to add more to the running game. So I could see another defensive player being cut, possibly to bring in a running back. So Del'Shawn Phillips is a good candidate. Next for the Buffalo Bills would be running back Darrynton Evans, a former Chicago Bear. I don't know. This was a little bit tricky. Their backfield is already not that great. Nyheim Hines has already been lost for the year with an injury, and James Cook is the main guy on that roster. Damian Harris, who they signed, Latavius Murray, who's a little bit older. I'm not sure cutting Darrynton Evans is a great move, especially with the running backs that they have. I think Damian Harris can bounce back a little bit with this Buffalo Bills roster. Latavius Murray has been bounced around and he's getting a little bit older as we speak right now. So Darrynton Evans may not be a great cut. I think he has some experience as a turner as well. So maybe I think fitting him in that type of role could help. But losing Isaiah McKenzie, who's been your return man for the past couple of seasons. So I'm maybe not in agreement with this one. Today's video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. For me, it is very important to have a VPN to protect my online privacy. It'd be very, very creepy if there was someone out there who kept a log of every single thing that you did online. So why let your internet provider really do that to you online? The best thing to do is to get yourself a VPN, and why not go with ExpressVPN, the best VPN available. Personally, I like it for the fact that you can unlock Netflix shows that you do not get in the US market. Now, one show that I've started to get myself into is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You search Brooklyn Nine-Nine in the US, doesn't come up, but you can switch your location to Canada and you can research Brooklyn Nine-Nine again, and bam, it pops up right then and there, and you can catch up on your episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Now, if you click the link in the description below, you will get 3 free months of ExpressVPN. Just by clicking the link below and you sign up today, you will get 3 months free of ExpressVPN. All you have to do is click the link down below and you will get ExpressVPN. Now, let's just get back to the video. Carolina Panthers Jake Luton a former Jacksonville Jaguars. They've already named Bryce Young their starter. They have Andy Dalton on the roster. So they could possibly go into the year with 2 quarterbacks actively on the roster. They already picked Matt Corral last year's draft. So maybe Luton is the odd man out. So I could see that one being a possible cut for them. So especially with the young Bryce Young, no pun intended. You have Andy Dalton, who's probably going to be that mentor type of guy, and Matt Corral, who you spent a 3rd round pick last year on. So I think he's the odd man out. Chicago Bears, Nisimba Webster. This could be interesting because Dory's Fountain has really stepped up during this preseason. Nisimba Webster has been like a preseason practice squad type of guy the last couple of years, especially with the additions of DJ Moore. You have Mooney, you have Claypool, and you have Equinemius St. Brown. And I think Donta Patterson could be a possible cut, but I don't think so, especially with the struggles of Velus Jones as far as him returning kicks and punts. So Nisimba Webster could be the odd man out, especially with Dory's Fountain having the preseason that he's having. Nisimba Webster's not having a bad preseason on his own right, but he could just happen to find himself being the odd man out at this point. Cincinnati Bengals, Terrell Basham, and at the defensive end position, he spent the last couple of years with the Jets. I think with the depth that they have at their pass rushing position with Hendrickson and Herbert, a size sample, and they spent the 1st round pick on the defensive end in Miles Murphy, so he could possibly be the odd man out at this point. Anthony Schwartz, he just hasn't brought it together for the Cleveland Browns. He just hasn't put it together. He has the speed that can really change dynamics of the game, but he's just, number one, dropping the football, and he hasn't been really much of a target. So he spent the 2021 3rd round pick on him, a guy who I think if he was to step up and elevate his game, can still be a very productive player for this Cleveland Brown offense. Just haven't seen it yet, and he could possibly be an odd man out. Now, the wide receiver position for the Browns, I don't think it's very deep. You have Cooper, you have Donovan Peoples-Jones. They had Marquise Goodwin. They went to get Elijah Moore. I'm not just sure about what Anthony Schwartz is going to bring at this point because he hasn't brought it throughout his career. So he could possibly be the odd man out. Next, the Cowboys, Jordan Lewis. Now, this one is very interesting. He's been dependable for them. He's been a very solid cornerback in 2022 and in the course of his career with the Cowboys. Even though I hate to say that because he went to that team up north. He also has a Liz Frank injury in his foot and hasn't recovered yet. But I don't necessarily know if cutting him will be a good deal. I'm not sure if he's ever going to return to some type of form because Liv Frank injuries with the foot have been known to be very tricky. I'm not sure, but I think he could be an odd cut because of the injury and the recovery part, or they could probably have him on IR or something because he's talented. He's a very good player when he's in. It's just the foot injury is concerning. Next for the Denver Broncos is Albert. I'm not going to butcher that name. He had a torn ACL during his rookie year. When he's played, he's been possible, but he's just been injured a lot. That is one thing I have noticed, kind of like Tim Patrick's situation where when they play and they're healthy, they're good players. It's just they haven't been able to be healthy on a full-term basis. I could think he could be an odd man out. They have Greg Dulcich. They added Craig Manners this offseason, and they brought in Adam Troutman, and it's just the fact of his injuries could be an odd man out. Next is Khalil Dorsey from the Detroit Lions. I'm not sure if you're going to cut a corner, especially with the defense, with the secondary wasn't great. CJ Gardner-Johnson, they brought in Brian Branch in the rookie year. They have Cam Sutton, who they also brought in this offseason. Emmanuel Mosley. I really think that this team could probably use him. He's a solid player, but he's probably going to be more of a practice squad guy with this secondary, so I can see that. So for the Green Bay Packers, Patrick Taylor, I mean, yeah, they already have Aaron Jones. They already have A.J. Dillon, who has possibly been a guy that they've been working throughout the course of this offense with Jones. His pass catching ability in his running game, and Dillon with the powerhouse in his running game. So they might be an odd man out for them. So he's just going to be an odd man out, especially with the roster that they have at that running back position right now. Houston Texans, E.J. Perry. Now they already have Davis Mills on the roster. They ended up drafting C.J. Stroud, and they have a veteran backup in Case Keenum. So he's probably just going to be the odd man out at this point because we already know C.J. Stroud is the starter. Davis Mills is probably going to be that third-string backup, and Case Keenum is the veteran that you're probably going to have on his roster to help C.J. Stroud develop. I think he's just going to be the odd man out. Indianapolis Colts, Mo Allie-Cox. Now, this one is interesting. Mo Allie-Cox is solid, but last offseason, they just gave him an extension, 3 years for $17 million. and they've already talking about him being a cut. I think he could be a big piece that can help the development of Anthony Richardson. I just really believe that. Now they added Pharaoh Brown. They have Will Mallory, who they drafted this offseason. I believe Mo Allie-Cox should be there. I'm sorry. I don't know. It's been rumors around the trade of cutting him for a while, but I don't believe the coach should let him go. Because I think the team that would get him will get very good value out of Mo Allie-Cox. And the Colts are a team that needs to have some weapons, some proven and stable weapons around Anthony Richardson. Even if it's just maybe this year and then you get them different pieces. I just think they need to get the most weapons that they can now to help Anthony Richardson develop versus getting rid of weapons. That's just my opinion. Luke Farrell, Jacksonville Jaguars, formerly of the Ohio State University, so I have a little bit of a bias towards him. But you already have Evan Ingram, who's the mainstay at the tight end position on this roster. Luke Farrell, I saw him in college. He was a very solid college tight end. It just hasn't transitioned too much in the NFL. I think you keep him. The tight end position for the Jaguars is not deep. Outside of Evan Ingram, you only have a guy like Garrett Prince. And they have a rookie in Burton Strange that I'm reading right now. It's not a very deep position. I'm not sure whether you keep Prince or Farrell. I think you keep somebody as them. And maybe Farrell's an odd man out. I'm biased. I'm going to rope Farrell to win on the team because he's a Buckeye. So maybe so. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a name that has been thrown around. And the Chiefs cutting him for a while. Last year, he missed the latter half of the year due to injury. And Pacheco, when he was in, stepped up tremendously. Jared McKinnon was a big part of that offense. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's been okay when he's in there. He just hasn't stayed healthy. And he could just be the odd man out. They were a first-round pick of 2020. He's coming up on that option, so I don't think he's probably going to last too long in Kansas City. I think the health is the problem, in my opinion, but when he's in there, he's a very quality back. I think he's just going to be the odd man out. Amik Robertson, I saw him in the trade article as well. I just don't know. Their secondary is bad. The secondary is bad. You had Nate Hobbs, Tyler Hall, and David Long Jr., Duke Shelley, former Bear, Brandy Fraser's son. I just think he's the best player that you had. I don't think you cut him. The Raiders have already struggled at the corner position, and Amik Robertson, while he's not great, he's not terrible either. And cutting him would only save $1 million, so it's not like you're spending a ton of money on the guy. So I think you should keep him. That's just my opinion. Chargers, Stone, Smart, I could see that with Donald Perrin and Gerald Everett as the mainstays at that tight end position for them. I can see where they cut a guy like him. He was an undrafted guy in 2022. And they also would be inclined to give Jay McKitty another season. So it's just an odd man out. Rams, Royce Freeman, Cam Akers is back. They had Ronnie Rivers, who has been flashing a little bit this preseason. Zach Evans, who they drafted late. I'm not sure. Royce Freeman, he's a little bit older, so they might have something to do with it. If he's not productive at that age, they might just end up letting him go. Myles Gaskin for the Dolphins is I think it's a little bit of a strange one, but they have a lot of names, a lot of bodies at their running back position. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. Myles Gaskin could be an odd man out. I think Myles Gaskin can still be productive. It's just Mostert with the speed. It's just Mostert hasn't stayed healthy throughout the course of his career at this point. Jeff Wilson Jr. also has some questions with his health. So I'm not sure if cutting him will be the best deal. I'm not sure. They also have a rookie in Devon Achane, who I think has been solid. It's just he might be the odd man out, but the injuries that they've had with Mostert and Wilson Jr., I just don't know if cutting him could be the deal, but he may end up being the odd man out, especially if they believe that Jeff Wilson Jr. and Mostert are ahead of him. He might end up being the odd man out. Vikings, wide receiver N'Keal Harry, former first-round pick of the Patriots. He was a Bear last year, so I was one that was hoping that the Bears' tenure would actually work out, but he has not been able to stay healthy. That's the thing with N'Keal Harry throughout the course of his career was he hasn't been healthy, and when he's been healthy, he hasn't been that productive. He didn't really do too much with the Bears last year. Now, the Vikings already have Jettas, Addison, and KJ Osborne, who was going to get most of the targets at that wide receiver position. It's just, he was a low-risk, high-reward type of player when the Bears got him, and it's the same thing now. It's just that first-round talent that he has not flourished because, number one, I think the main reason is the injuries that he's been dealing with throughout the course of his career, so he could just be an odd man out with the Minnesota Vikings. Trace McSorley for the New England Patriots. You have Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. Now, this is probably a team that may keep Malik Cunningham because of the things he could do at quarterback, and he's been playing some time at receiver. So I think you're probably going to keep Cunningham and probably split his roles between maybe quarterback, depending on the injuries, and receiver. Trace McSorley can see himself as maybe the odd man out if they decide to keep 3 quarterbacks. Well, I think they'd probably keep Malik Cunningham, but if they actually keep Trace McSorley on the roster, maybe, but he just might be the odd man out with the quarterback situation that they have with the New England Patriots. The Saints, Jonathan Abram, he just hasn't really lived out to that first round pick in his career. He just hasn't lived up to it. He's had some injury history. He's only played in 43 games in his career. It's just, he hasn't lived up to that first round pick. They have Marcus May, they have Tyrann Mathieu, they have Jordan Howden, who they drafted in the 5th round, veteran of JT Gray. He could just be an odd man out. It just hasn't flourished for him in his career. He's had some injury histories, so he could just be an odd man out like a lot of the players on this list. When talented, I think he can be a very solid player for him. It's just the injuries and him not being able to stay on the field. Cornerback Aaron Robinson from the New York Giants. They selected him in the 3rd round. It's just he's been injured as well. He has been injured. He's only appeared in 11 games and 4 starts in his career. He could just be with, I want to say, just 9 men out. He's been hurt. He hasn't been able to field. The Giants just could be looking at going a new direction. The Jets, Ashton Davis, who was a 3rd round pick in 2020. Now, he could be an odd man out because they have a lot of players on that defense. They have a lot of players in the defense. They traded for Chuck Clark in the offseason. And with this Robert Saleh defense, he hasn't been really that productive, so he could just be an odd man out with the pieces that they have on that defense. Philadelphia Eagles, former Ohio State Buckeye Trey Sermon. He just hasn't had I don't think he's had the opportunity, and he could just be another guy that could be the odd man out. They traded for DeAndre Swift. They already have, and they signed a Rashad Penny. They have Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, all players that have been productive, with Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell being productive last year. And with Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift that they added in, Trey Sermon is just the odd man out. I love Trey Sermon for some of the things he did at Ohio State, but he's just another odd man out at this point. And he's been the odd man out throughout the course of his career in the NFL. And I hate to see it, but he's just been that. Pittsburgh Steelers, Akeem Butler, who they signed from the XFL. And he's big-time receiver at 6'5", 227. His hands is just not great. Well, I want to say his hands they're okay, and he's just not what they need at this point. They already have Deontay Johnson. They traded for Allen Robinson. George Pickens came on late, and I think he's probably going to be more of a special teams player, even though I think he had the potential to be better. He just hasn't been that short-handed type of guy. He might just be the odd man out. That's Newsome for the San Francisco 49ers. Also, another former Bear on this list. And they have so many weapons that he just beat the odd man out. He didn't live up to what I thought he was going to be with the Chicago Bears. I never expected him to be one of the big-time receivers or whatever, just productive. And he wasn't that. With Ayuk, with Jennings, and with Debo, and some of the weapons that they have, he just won't see a lot of the field, even if he was kept around. So he just and he's not particularly big, and he's not particularly fast either. So wide receiver D. Eskridge for the Seattle Seahawks. They have a 3-headed monster with Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba out of the Ohio State University. As I record this video, oddly enough, Jackson Smith-Njigba just had wrist surgery, but they still expect him to be ready for week 1. So we're going to see how that fares out. So they undrafted Jake Bobo has flashed in some of the preseason games that they've had. They might end up keeping these Eskridge depending on what the severity of the surgery of the Jackson Smith-Njigba wrist injury. He's also missed time due to injuries in his career, so it's interesting to see how that receiver's position is going to play out in the back end for the Seattle Seahawks. For the Buccaneers, Patrick Laird, they already cut Rodrigo Blankenship, a kicker that they lost in the competition. Rashad Wright, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Chase Edmunds are ahead of him. And from what we've seen in this preseason, Sean Tucker has been a very solid piece for them. Patrick Laird is just another guy who's actually 28 years old. So he's already getting older at the running back position. So if you're older and you're not productive at running back, we've seen in the NFL, they're going to get rid of you. They're going to get rid of you. So I can see him being cut. Powell Pecco for the Tennessee Titans. He's played for a couple teams through his career. And with Jeffrey Simmons, who I think is one of the more underrated defensive tackles Tyler Tate and Nico Autry, who's been solid for them. He just might be an odd man out with Michael DeWumfor and TK McClendon Jr. He just might be an odd man out. He probably can go to somewhere and be solid, but he's probably going to be the odd man out. And the last team is offensive lineman Tris Scott for the Washington Commanders. He was brought in to help boost it with Andrew Wiley that they signed. And he's probably going to start alongside former Bear Charles Leno Jr. They picked up Braden Daniels in the 4th round. He's 29 years old. They signed him to a 2-year, $6.5 million deal. But that was before they ended up adding Daniels and interior lineman Ricky Stromberg. So he just might be an odd man out. Well, Scott, he can produce depth at that tackle position for them. And the offensive line have struggled with. And you're going to need to keep Sam Howell healthy so you can really see how he goes. I'm not sure. They also have Cornelius Lucas, who's also a former Bear. So if he's out, it's probably just as in, like I said, no clear role for him. Is that pieces, they added pieces after him and they added pieces before him. So he just might be the odd man out. But that's it for this video. Make sure you guys leave the video a like, comment your thoughts, sub to the channel. APW Sports signing out. Make sure you guys stay safe. Have a great next day, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.